agenda there. Actually,
Get through?
I updated it slightly. Okay.
What are you doing to your house, Mark?
Sorry?
I see you have a building
Yeah, adding a little garage
garage.
on yes, here. Here, yeah.
Thanks.
This is slightly updated with attachment, but the attachments are over there. But, I have a copy of the master plan if you want to refer to it.
Oh, wow.
And I have possibly Lynn Arthur may come.
To discuss battery storage as well, or
Sorry?
to discuss battery storage as well, or?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
She's on the advisor, on the energy committee for the town.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the right glasses, but I didn't get my right glasses.
Really?
No, so that's all. So you saw there's one here that I have as an attachment, which is this one here. You saw.
We need to get this shown around. We're 3 minutes late.
What time is it?
6.
3 minutes past the hour.
Here you see this one, chapter 20.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know here, Fran? Yes. So whether we should do reduce to 5 or to 6. I think, I don't know if we want a discussion on this. Make a recommendation. Okay, ready?
All set.
All right, so you ready? So like, welcome everybody to the July meeting of the Planning Commission of the Village of Southampton. We have here a good agenda today. So we'll start, we'll follow the agenda. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance. So pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to do a roll call. So Pamela Gilmartin,
Here?
Christian Picot,
Here.
Michael Anderson,
Here.
Michelangelo,
Here.
and Mark Schiffer, myself. We have I haven't seen actually the previous minutes. Not sure if, so maybe we should skip those. Has anybody seen the previous minutes?
Yes, they have been circulated to all of you. I've actually made a couple of comments on them, and they were recirculated with my comments afterwards to all of you.
Okay, did you see them? Do we have a motion to approve, or should we postpone it?
Well, let me ask, did anybody read them other than myself?
I did not.
Okay, so perhaps you could
I'll take a look at
Postpone
it.
table that and make sure
Okay, so
everyone reads them.
We'll table the approval of the minutes for next time. The next point on the agenda is, well, on behalf of the Planning Commission, we'll welcome our new mayor, Bill Manger. And as a part of his, and Bill Manger was signed this mayoral citation to 3 members of the Planning Commission whose term had expired. And maybe do you want to read the citation?
Sure. This is my pleasure to read. For your years of service to the Planning Commission of the Village of Southampton, New York, with appreciation for your contribution and dedication, we hereby honor Robert Essay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, thank you.
I tried to go to my house, it took us an hour to come from Sag Harbor.
I know,
And you can't go west, because all the side streets are backed up.
I know.
And
I know.
the traffic light on Windmill Lane and Nugent Street, you can't get across, the traffic's just gridlocked there.
Yeah.
And that's why there will be no minutes today.
So,
Thank you.
Congratulations, Bob.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
My recommendation, you gotta extend Sunrise Highway, get the traffic out of the village.
Yeah, I know. So we have a similar mayoral citation for Eduardo Simeoni and one for Laura Devini, who both were longtime members of the Planning Commission. Now, there was a next item on the agenda is a discussion on reducing. We have reducing the number of members of the Planning Commission. I had attached here chapter 20 of the Village Code. And on chapter 20, section 20-2-A, it says there is hereby created a Village Planning Commission which shall consist of 8 members appointed by the mayor with the approval of the Board of Trustees. So there was a suggestion to reduce the amount of members of the Planning Commission from 8 to possibly 5 or 6. I don't know if there's you want to have a discussion on this? So we make a recommendation to the mayor and the Board of Trustees. I think their preference is to keep it at 5. I think there's enough work for 6. Is there any preference, Pamela?
well, if we get a lot of committees going, 5's not a lot of people.
Right.
But, we don't always have a lot of committees, so
Right. What do you think?
Well, we serve the village trustees and the mayor. I'm sure they didn't come to this conclusion lightly. I'm sure they studied it, and 5 or 6. 6 is fine with me. 5 is fine. Whatever they really decide they need us to do, that's what we'll do. We'll make do.
Okay, and you?
Well,
Christian?
I think that we have elected officials and we have appointed officials. We are appointed, we serve at the pleasure of the Board of Trustees. I understand that the Board of Trustees, led by the mayor, wants to have a constituency of the Planning Commission with 5 members, as it does with many of the other boards, including the Land Use Board. So I think making a recommendation that is different to what their wishes are is really a waste of time at this point.
I agree with Michael.
You agree with Michael?
Yeah, I do.
All right, so so I think that we'll make a recommendation to keep it at 5 then. But with the door open, that if they want to add one more person, because I think that we have a lot on our plate, and we could definitely use more hands. Okay, so we'll do that. The next item on the agenda here is also somewhat organizational, whereby we would like to appoint Michael Anderson to be the town liaison for the village. And I think it's a very good move and suggestion for the Board of Trustees to have a liaison to the town, so we are kept more abreast of what's happening, anything that may impact the village, that we become more aware of it. I think that should we make everybody's in agreement?
Aye.
Yeah,
I second that motion, if there's
yeah.
a motion.
I don't know if there's need to be a motion, but we'll at least support, So congratulations, Michael, on being the
Thank you, Mark.
new town liaison.
No.
Okay, very good. On the next item on the agenda was to get an update on the town affordable housing initiative. We had invited Kara back, who is in charge of the housing department for the town, but they are just moving their offices this week from the town hall to Hampton Bays. And so she asked me to possibly reschedule it for the August meeting. Also, there hasn't been any funds disbursed from that special tax from the county. But definitely it's going to be an interesting presentation, since the village has opted in terms of projects that would be entitled to get the funds for workforce housing or affordable housing. So we look forward to having her next in August. The next point on the agenda is also postponed. There was discussion about the sewer and the wastewater committee update. They asked us to postpone this presentation. So this we'll keep it on the agenda, but we're not going to discuss it tonight. The next point on the agenda is a special presentation and a discussion on the proposed battery energy storage system that we have that's being proposed in Shinnecock Hills. And so maybe I'll let Christian introduce the topic.
Sure, thank you, Mark. So just for the benefit of the public and planning commission members, I thought it'd be interesting to sort of have a bit of background on this issue. So in 2019, the New York State adopted the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, otherwise called the Climate Act, which sets the state's goal of generating 70% of its electricity from renewable resources by 2030. Now, battery energy storage system, otherwise known as BESS, are part of the state's new plan to capitalize on green energy, storing electricity produced by solar and wind producers to be returned to the electrical grid as needed. The town of Southampton is the only one out of 4 communities on Long Island that have crafted zoning code to allow BESS facilities. Now, the topic for today is this application of the Canal Southampton Battery Storage LLC that's seeking a site plan special exemption approval for the construction of a BESS facility containing 30 battery enclosures, each with 24 battery modules on a little under 5-acre property, which is located on the North Road and Hampton Road near the canal. And it's 3 bridges, and you have on your TV screens here in the room the location. My understanding is that the LFP technology is that what will be used in the proposed BESS, and that's the newer lithium iron phosphate type batteries, also known as low burning batteries. And that's not the type that's been used in the news, but we'll talk more about this, about the giant fires in Arizona or elsewhere. These are lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries, which are sort of an older format, and nickel is very unstable with lithium, which is why you add manganese and cobalt. But today, my understanding is that this project is an LFP technology. So we have with us today resident Rome Arnold, who's got some experience in the matter, who sat in some of the planning board meetings at the town and has a view that he wants to share with us. So I would welcome Rome to stand at the podium over there so you have sound and the cameras can see you and the public can follow the conversation.
Terrific. Is that
That's
good?
wired for sound. Thank you.
Yes, good. Thank you. So by way of background, my name is Rome Arnold. I am a full-time resident of the village. Does that sound working?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have degrees from Yale and Harvard, which are irrelevant to this discussion. What's really more relevant, I think, is common sense. What I've done in preparation and also out of personal interest is, and I'll give you these notes, I've read through twice the 300-page storage proposal. I've read the drainage design report. I've also looked through the 20 maps that are dated variously from 2020 to 2023. I also listened to the 27 East podcast advocacy, which went on for about an hour. And I visited the site. I went again to the records office here, or actually in the town this morning, to make sure that I hadn't missed anything recently filed. So the most recent filing is May of last year. Now, the promoters of this facility stood up in a June 8th meeting and made comments about diligence they had done with the fire department with respect to other aspects they've been questioned, but none of that's been filed in writing, so it's very difficult to respond to those promises, and obviously they carry no weight if they're simply oral. So let me hand this out and I'll talk from it. Take notes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, my goal is not to be hysterical, as some people have become, and viciously attacking this thing without really thinking it through. And what I would summarize by saying is there are a lot of holes in what's being proposed. Either things that are inconsistent, that haven't been completed, or are promises in the writing. And most of this is, yes, very concerning. So if I can walk you through just issues that I note. Who actually owns the entity that's going to build this thing? It is listed in New York State as a foreign limited liability company. That clearly raises questions. If something goes wrong, what will this entity be responsible, or will it disappear and leave us to clean it up? It's even more inconsistent within the proposal. At one point they talk about the BES as a corporation with Ernesto Benito, director. I don't know what that means. The next is a filing that lists Ralph Fusasilo as the sole owner in fee, not a member owner of the LLC. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so there may be an explanation for how all this fits together, but it does raise issues. And the biggest issue is that this thing is registered with New York State as a foreign LLC, a foreign limited liability LLC. So to make the point again a different way, you would normally look at an entity and wonder who the corporate parent is. Does the corporate parent have ability to stand behind these issues? Because LIPA or PSEG, whatever you want to call them, are behind this, this is a entity it's an arm's length negotiation. And by the way that some promises that were made on the advocacy podcast that this would reduce electricity rates, to me, simply doesn't reflect an understanding of how our rate-based system works. Now, by way of credentials, I was the leader of the team advising the Argentine government on the creation of their rate system for their gas system that mirrors ours. So I've spent a lot of time advising a government, on how this works based on our systems. The point is, it is a rate of return calculation. The determination of an electric utility, the primary goal is to deliver uninterrupted power. And if you put in unreliable systems, now this battery may make it more reliable, but the utility has to back up this system with a reliable system or your refrigerator is going to go down. Okay, next question is and Christian addressed this point. What batteries are being proposed? Well, throughout this, it's lithium ion in one place, in a very strange place. It's presumably the provider of the battery, FlexGen. So in their one section of the proposal, all of a sudden, the word lithium iron phosphate battery comes to mind. I went through this 3 times to make sure I understood what battery is being proposed. Now, why would that matter? Advocates say that lithium iron phosphate doesn't burn and is not as subject to thermal runaway. I'm sure you've all heard about thermal runaway. But first of all, the notion, and this was on the advocacy podcast, that a fire only burns to 230 degrees Fahrenheit is kind of laugh out loud. If these things start to go, we have a serious problem. Okay. Next thing I would address, and again, these are the whole point of this discussion. I need to dial it back a little bit, because what I really want to present to you are issues to consider in making a decision supporting this or not. So the drainage design report, it's about 90 pages. What's remarkable is it's only about stormwater runoff. There's no discussion of what happens if there's a fire. What happens if we have to pour literally hundreds of thousands of gallons of water on this facility to keep it from going nuts. Where is that water going to go? The facility is listed as 10 to 46 feet above sea level. Well, the canal is sea level. So you put 400,000 gallons on this facility. That, by the way, this is their map, not mine. So that is a half-mile radius. You'll notice all 3 bridges are covered. Now, what are they doing here besides shooting themselves in the foot? This is there are no churches or schools within this radius. Okay, fine. Can we go back to who's controlling the slides? Can we go back one? This is my map. This is a quarter-mile radius. Now, why is that relevant? So there was a BESS in Chandler, Arizona that caught fire. This thing burned for 2 weeks. Now, they're lucky. It did not go to thermal runaway. The fire department would not go in the building because they'd had past experience of injuries. I don't think they had fatalities, but they had injuries. They wouldn't go in. So it burned. What do? They did a quarter-mile radius evacuation around the facility. Quarter-mile radius evacuation. You're shutting down 27, the railroad, 27 bridge, and the railroad bridge. It's common sense that this is nuts. Okay, let's step through the next question. Is this facility well protected? Security from vandalism or worse? Somebody angry, what can they do? Well, there's a 4-foot chain link fence around it, 4 feet. I can jump a 4-foot fence. Each of these 30 facilities are freestanding. They are not in a contained building. Each one is freestanding. You could take a shotgun and have a lot of fun from the fence line if you felt like you wanted to cause a problem. Guess what else? It's not manned. The facility is unmanned. That's the plan. Now you get into the emotional part. So what happens if there's a fire? Okay, first of all, throughout the proposal, no matter how they bob and weave, there's numerous references to thermal runaway. Everybody knows what that is, right? Okay. So then you say, all right, fire suppression. What are they going to do about fire suppression? Now anything in italics here is a direct quote from their proposal. It's not me. So water is considered the preferred agent of suppression. So suppression will be the local fire department via water spray method. Okay. 1 fire hydrant. 1. And now orally in the June 8th meeting, there was some discussion I heard about whether they're going to put a 2nd fire hydrant in. 5 acres, 2 fire hydrants, and we're going to put this fire out. And a lot of this is all promises. Promises. We don't have a plan, we'll have a plan. Approve this, we'll have a plan. Then, then you see in their discussion of chemicals, clean agent systems, 3M Novec 1230, FM 2000. I didn't have the time to research what that is, but it doesn't sound like something you'd want in your drinking water. So let's think about that. We use some chemicals, we use water, and it all flows into the canal. That flows into Peconic and Shinnecock Bay. Let me put it in perspective. So a Tesla battery fire generally takes 6,000 gallons or more to extinguish. Now let's pause for a second because the promoters will say, no, this is not an electric car battery. This is a different kind of battery. It's safer. It's a lithium-ion battery. Maybe safer. Technically, a Tesla battery is a fast discharge, and these are slow discharge batteries. Clearly, a lot of the problems that you read about in New York City are because they're overcharging the batteries. These batteries will be properly charged, carefully charged. So yeah, the chance of a fire is low. I think we could acknowledge that, but it's not no. It is not no risk of a fire. The numbers are staggering. So 6,000 gallons to put out a Tesla. This facility is equivalent to 2,000 Teslas on a megawatt hour basis. And if you do the math, 400,000 gallons would be required. If it's linear, and I'm reaching here to make a point, it's not necessarily linear. If it takes 6,000 to put out 1 Tesla, it's going to take X many to put out 20 Teslas. But, 400,000 gallons if you give me linear. 400,000 gallons per module, and there are 30 of them. So maybe my numbers are twice what they should be. And then the question is, will one set fire to another one? There was a ship called the Felicity Ace. You've all heard this story, right?
No.
Felicity Ace had 5,000 brand new cars. It was a car carrier ship coming
yeah.
from Europe.
Just recently.
No, that was 2 days ago.
Yeah, 2
No,
days
no,
ago.
this was a year and a half ago. It had Bentleys, Porsches, Audis, electric. Some were electric. One or two, nobody knows for sure, set fire to the ship, set fire to the other cars, which set fire to the other cars. It burned for 7 days. They tried to tow it back to port and it sank. This is not some rusty, ore carrier. This is a relatively, I looked it up, the ship was built in 2006. It's a relatively modern ship. And again, the proponents of these facilities will argue that those batteries are different. But think about that. These are brand new lithium-ion cars. Ford factory, if you saw this, in early February, had their new trucks are called Lightning. Am I taking too much time?
No.
No, go ahead.
So, good. The Ford Lightning truck, they had several in the lot at the factory. One caught fire, set fire to 2 others. Spontaneous. The fire department described the fire as unextinguishable. Jaguar, 3 weeks ago, recalled every single one of their electric I-Pace cars, lithium-ion battery cars. Over 6,000 cars, relatively new, 2 years or newer. All of them have been recalled for unknown battery risk. And that's the point here. It isn't that an electric car automatically means that a BESS battery is wrong or it doesn't work, but you're in the same ballpark. And there have been examples. The East Hampton one that caught fire, the Chandler one that caught fire, the California one that caught fire. And then you look at this, you say, wait a minute, if this thing catches fire, this doesn't affect the town, this affects the entire South Fork.
Excuse
The
me.
other thing that it
Excuse me.
amuses me throughout this proposal,
I just have a quick question.
of course,
Can you give us a brief history as how this even all came about? Is this before the New York State? Is before LIPA? Is this a LIPA-sanctioned project?
I can tell you generally, not specifically. So generally, we have this shift to alternative energy.
Right.
And in the process of doing that, we ignore energy footprint, which is how much land it takes to match the old oil and gas facility. That's fine. So we'll put solar panels on the garbage dump and so forth, figure out ways.
Right.
The utilities go out to third parties and provide specifications of what they're looking for this kind of aspect.
Okay.
And so this is what this is. So this entity.
So LIPA went to this group asking
Well,
for
they put it out to
proposals?
They put it out to bid,
Yeah,
and these are the
right.
guys that came in and said, we can do it at the price you want. I mean, again, that's the general way it works. I don't know specifically what, in this case, how that process, I kind of came in late.
Mhm.
I think in this case, the state came out with code, model code, NYSERDA produced battery storage code.
Uh-huh.
They recognized battery storage as that played a role in our grid and the infrastructure that our grid depends on. And the town wrote zoning code. This parcel was identified in that process
Mm-hmm.
near a substation between County Road 39, the LIRR. And so there may have been a bid from PSEG, but I'm not too sure. I think it may have been the result of zoning.
Actually, thank you, Michael, for pointing this out. So do you know if there were also alternate site than this one in that discussion with the town, since you worked on it?
It wouldn't have been a discussion with the town as to like which sites they should land. It was when they contemplated zoning, they looked at the design standards suggested by the state, which is NYSERDA, right? And they gave us suggestions on how close it should be next to a home, its proximity to a substation. And then we designed a zoning code, when I worked for the town,
Mm-hmm.
that met those standards and or exceeded them. In many instances, we found the state's standards to be a little bit more lax than we were comfortable with. So we created, going off of memory, larger minimum lot size standards. So it had to be a bigger lot. We reduced the size and scale of the project. I think the fencing, I think it's in the code, it's 6 feet, so I'm surprised if there's a 4-foot proposal. But a lot of these, specific design standards you would address in the town's planning board meeting and make sure that the town is adhering to the code that they have. So I'm assuming you did present to the planning board, and what was said on the 4-foot fencing? Because it specifically says 6 feet.
I've wound myself up a little bit on this, so in going in front of the town on June 8th, I just made simple points. One is the foreign-based LLC and no accountability, and then the second is the location.
So I really appreciate very much the presentation. We have also invited Lynn Arthur, who is a member of the town energy committee, or the town which is a division of the State Sustainability Committee. So I'd like Lynn maybe to make a presentation also.
Could I make 2 more points?
Okay, sure.
Because they're here, but
And
it's
then
important.
we can have a discussion once we have.
One point is, because there's a lot of reference to standards, and Michael's, for what you're talking about, is probably ahead of what's going on, and that's what's interesting. So again, the proposal refers frequently to how they've met the standards. They call it's called the NAPA 855, NAFPA, which means the National Fire Protection Association 855 standards for ABES.
Right.
Well, guess what? That was written in September 2019 and has not been updated. We know a lot more about this than that since those codes were written. I don't think that's the standard. I think,
Well, that standard would still hold. Even the town's zoning code would defer to that. It would defer to the national NFPS, yeah, right, and the electric one as well. That I can't recall off the top of my head, but often an application will be presented to a planning board, and the applicant will say that they've done A through Z, and the planning board will have to review that and say, well, you're actually missing here, and you don't meet these standards, and we don't agree with this. And so that's a natural,
Okay.
that's something, that's a conversation that
Interactive.
always happens.
interactive.
Well, it's not only interactive, it's just like kind of standard operating procedure that the applicant is going to do anything they can to get what they want. And the town has planners and a planning board that's going to review the application, notice that the 4-foot fence doesn't actually comply to a standard, and say you need to either A, go to the ZBA, or amend this to 6 feet.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's normal process. It goes beyond battery storage.
I really think it's important, though, from a personal point of view, not me personally, but all of what we do to protect our firefighting personnel. So 2 things. In this proposal, they admit firefighting personnel protective equipment does not offer electrical protection. So in other words, if our guys go running in and are not properly trained. Second point is, do not attempt to extinguish fire near electrical equipment, water, or other chemical as an electric shock or arc. I'm reading from their proposal, right? And yet, elsewhere, they say the only way to put it out is water.
So this is where the zoning.
Okay.
No, I think this is just, I just want to make a comment on this. So this is where the zoning code comes into play, where it specifies they need to identify the kind of battery storage that is, what is it, whether it's lithium or magnesium or whatever. So fire departments can use the appropriate strategy to mitigate the fire. But, it's still the technology as a whole.
Bob Essie used to be on the fire department.
Well, I'm
If it catches fire, we let it burn. The problem is, what are the poison gases coming out of it? What are the poisonous chemicals?
Do you want to speak?
My name is Bob Essay. I used to be a member of the Planning Commission, also the Architecture Review and Historic. I'm a member of the Southampton Fire Department for 55 years. And with these electric cars, putting the fires out is a non-situation. One of the problems is when you start burning these things, what poison gases come out of them? Will our CVS gear protect us? And then if we get covered with this stuff, decontamination, all the hoses, the equipment, everything else, and the water that goes underground, where is that going? Now, up in Shinnecock Hills, that's all pure sand up there. So it's going to go straight down into the water table. So all the things that Mr. Arnold has mentioned about containment, fire, all the rest of the stuff, I can see 100%. Nobody's really looked into this stuff. And if they put it up there and the thing does catch fire, we've got a major problem on your hands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
One last point. They reignite. You put them out,
Right.
3 days later, just happened in Chinatown.
So let's hear your, right. Let's hear from Lynn.
Sorry.
There's one thing I want to mention. Any type of fire, that cars catch fire, they've got magnesium on, you do not spray water on because they'll explode. I saw that firsthand happen. There was a house fire, and the guy had magnesium wheels in there, and they hit it with water, and next thing, it looked like a bomb going off in Vietnam with pieces of metal flying all over the place.
But Bob, aren't there other fire suppressant methods that they employ?
They basically said you can't put the fires out, not with this
Interesting.
stuff.
Yeah, I know the state's training fire
But
departments on this, but I don't know what the training
I do
entails.
want to make the point, though, that I made earlier, that this is supposed to be lithium iron phosphate technology, the newer one. So when you spoke of magnesium issues, which is supposed to stabilize nickel when you have a problem with the lithium, this is older technology. So we
Yeah,
gotta
Does anybody
be
know
distinctive.
when these things catch fire, what gases they produce, and if you mix them with water, what?
The
These
young
are
lady
all
in
the
the back
things
is
I'm
shaking
thinking
her head
about.
that she does, so
Yes.
let's bring her forward.
Yes.
Thank you, Bob.
I always come with props.
Yes. Rome is a gentleman.
And Rome, you have to hold them the entire time. So now your message will be a little mixed.
Just because I'm against it doesn't mean I can't help.
That's very nice. Appreciate that.
Thank you for inviting me. My name's Lynn Arthur. I am a volunteer on the town Sustainability Advisory Committee, and I chair the subcommittee on energy. I have been working with battery technology for a long time. I assisted the town, in fact, Michael, when he was on the staff, to design a residential battery program to install batteries in homes. So I have a lot of background. But what I was asked to do today was to talk with you about, I'm going to bring that down a little. I was asked to talk to you today about how these batteries are being used. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's what I'm prepared to walk through. Thank you.
We're going to put them so that the public can see them on the cameras that are above.
Okay. Yeah, I borrowed
Thank you,
these.
Sage.
Thank you.
What I do in my volunteer capacity and also sometimes as a subcontractor to the town is I do public communications and outreach on the various programs. So these are just some charts that I've pulled from, that type, updating the town board and what have you. All right, so why is battery storage of interest, in particular on the South Fork? To a question that, Michael, you asked earlier,
Yes.
one of the main reasons is that we have a state law called the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, also referred to as the CLCPA, that went into effect a couple years ago. It has certain mandates that we're just now starting to hear about. The municipalities will be given these mandates are coming out. We don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but you can actually go to I think it's the state senators have these hearings in Albany on the CLCPA. I do have a link where you can read more about that. But basically, there is a mandate that by, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's by 2040, the state needs to get 80% of our electricity from renewable sources, renewable
So it's
sources.
by 2030, it's 70%, according to the Climate Act. That's what I
Okay.
said earlier.
And also, the battery storage mandate was doubled. It's now 6,000 megawatts by 2030. So that's just a little over 6 years from now. The second reason, I'm going to hit these at a high level, and then I'm going to talk this more broadly about, what's important on Long Island, or on the South Fork in particular. Offshore wind. Obviously, there's an enormous amount of capacity that's going to be injected into the local grid starting in about 2 years, and in order for that to be effective, all that capacity will be used, locally first, but as more and more projects get sited off the South Fork and they make landfall, the grid is going to be getting a $3 billion, I think I read in Newsday, $3 billion worth of transmission upgrades in order to carry that capacity west towards New York City. So in order for that to work, one of the foundational elements is battery storage. The third reason, and I'm going to now refer to these charts, and I apologize for those of you who might have heard this story before, but if you look at this chart right here on your right and my left, what you see is, how to say this easily, that's why these charts are so valuable. On the bottom of the chart, the South Fork is a load pocket, and what that means is that we historically had one line coming across the canal, which was providing all the electricity from the power plant in Yaphank to the South Fork. I think now that there are two lines, and in fact, all of the there have been some upgrades right here in the village over the course of the last year. And there's more distribution lines that are being installed from west to east. But because we're in a load pocket during the summer, when our demand for electricity is the highest, we have this phenomena called summer peak, when demand exceeds supply, because they can only get so much capacity out here because of this constraint. So LIPA, and well, generally speaking, what you want to do to correct that problem is either generate electricity locally or store it locally so that it can be dispatched as needed. So the chart on the bottom represents the South Fork, and as you can see, there's a large rectangle that's divided into three sections. The section all the way to your left fully contains the village and also a large portion of Southampton town. The data above it in that graph that I will explain is representative of that box. This is the consumption data for a full calendar year, as you can see as it's labeled across the x-axis. The y-axis represents the amount of electricity that's being demanded in that period. Every vertical line represents 1 hour of electricity consumption. So as you can see, in the summer months, which is basically 3 months in the summer, the demand for electricity is almost quadruple what it is during the rest of the year. The rest of the year it's pretty stable, and that's because of our population in the summer. What's more interesting, and the reason I put this chart together for the town board, it's based, by the way, on data that I foiled, Freedom of Information Law, from LIPA. And I've been doing this for about 10 years. So I have data going back to 2012 that shows the steady increase. This is pre-pandemic and post-pandemic data. Do you see the color code? Bottom to top, the dark blue, orange, tan, yellow, and blue. Light blue? That light blue is the most recent data. So because the density has increased out here, because, people from the pandemic, our occupancy went down, empty homes went down to almost zero. We have a 30% increase in population, I think, year round.
The town jumped from 57 to 67, if I'm not mistaken.
There you go. So consequently, demand has risen at the same time. So one of the other main uses of battery storage is to provide relief during that summer period, because we can't count on the fact that LIPA is going to be able to transmit enough capacity to meet demand during those 90-degree days when it's really humid. They have a demand response program that, people sign up with their thermostats, and basically they take over the thermostats and they turn the temperature down on the thermostat so that the compressor doesn't go on in the air conditioner. But we need battery storage for that purpose.
If I can just interject a little bit, I think that what we are concerned about here, and the reason why the village is looking into it, it's not because we are questioning the rationale or the demand of battery storage. We are all for the use of battery storage. We are all for of renewable energy. We are all for a better efficiency. Here, the reason this was brought for us to the Planning Commission to review, because there is a concern that although there is a best effort in terms of use of technology, there is a best effort in terms of safety precautions, we are still questioning the issue that, and it is a valid concern, the location of that battery storage. That particular location, which is located so close to such a critical transportation center for the entire South Fork, that within a quarter mile of the facility, you have the 3 bridges that everybody uses to be able to come out of the. And so that's the concern that we have.
Okay,
We are
so,
not questioning whether we need battery storage. The question is this the right location for it? Is there an alternative location? What Christian said before in the study when they proposed that location, does it matter whether it's here or in Flanders or further west?
all right, I'd like to say make a couple of points to your question or your statement. And this is pardon me for it being a little long-winded, but I spent a lot of time with town staff, and I have for years. I have tremendous respect for their expertise, their processes. I have never found when they don't have the answer themselves, they always go to sources that are, state authorities, governmental agencies, standards bodies, and what have you. This question about this location, the recommendation that I have, and I'm going to read something because I did talk to some members of town staff, and I learned something. I think that's worth sharing. This is a valid question about the location, but I'm not so sure. Well, my understanding is there's something called, because I haven't heard this referenced at any of the public hearings, it's called the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. It's prepared by Suffolk County Department of Fire Safety Emergency Service. It's developed and adopted by 10 Suffolk County municipalities and their related police, fire, health, rescue, public works, and emergency services. The development of the plan included review and revisions from the Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Coast Guard, the New York State Department of Health, Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Transportation, State Police, and Environmental Conservation. So my recommendation would be that this concern that you have should be directed to the village representative who has the responsibility for the execution of that comprehensive emergency management plan. Southampton the town has a staff member responsible for public safety. If this request were made to the town, that's who it would be, who it would be directed to. Evacuation plans were submitted as part of the application, but not for a quarter mile. That was not requested. It's not required. The only thing that's required, as I understand from talking to town staff, is an evacuation plan for the site. And so I've seen the evacuation plan. It's confidential. I don't have it, but I think that you can get it. It was part of the application. And it was submitted along with the application. It's focused on evacuation of the site should any public safety issue arise.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you very much.
So it's a good question,
Yeah,
but
these are good points. We have been in touch with, in terms of process, we understand that they're in front of the planning board.
mhm.
We understand that they've had what they call a NEC deck, which is a negative declaration on their SECRA
Mhm.
review. I understand that the planning board is questioning this NEC deck. They may review it. I think there is it's still open for the public hearing is still open.
Mhm.
Will be open most likely for at least another month. I have asked Anthony Treza, who is the senior planner at the town, to provide us maybe a file that I can distribute here among the our members to review it. And I think it's a valid concern that's brought up to the village. I think that we want this technology to be used. We want take advantage of this, but also we also don't want to be boxed in
Sure.
case of
And I would bring,
emergency.
I would bring to your attention also that in Brookhaven, there is a public hearing, I think it's the 28th of this month. They're building a very large system right at the intersection, it's right on the Long Island Expressway at the intersection with Nichols Road. There are other systems that are already running, and they are adjacent to residential, you know, they're in the right zoning, but they're adjacent to residential properties that are also next to water bodies.
I mean,
I've-
the concern that we have here is really, as you said, evacuation in case something happens, that
Yeah.
we are still able to
Sure.
leave
Legitimate.
the South Fork. So I think that, I understand that John Rankin, who is the chief fire marshal, I think, at the town, I think Cheryl Kraft left, is looking into it closely. I think, I also have confidence in the town staff to review it, and I want to thank you both for the presentation. I think these are all valid points, and, you know, we're going to continue to look into it, review it, and then make a recommendation to our village board.
Can I just ask you a question? Thank you very much for coming this
Sure.
afternoon to present. You said you volunteer your work, but you also said you're a subcontractor?
Oh, yes, so let
So
me,
could you explain your economic interest in this business?
in this
Well,
project?
In generally in this
Sure.
electrical adventure.
Well, I have been, let's see, I joined the Sustainability Committee back in, I'm a retired IBM executive. I have a very technical background. I started the business microprocessor design, but I'm a management consultant. So in 2012, when I retired, and I went and did at Stony Brook an MBA in finance, I was recruited onto the Sustainability Committee. So I got involved, and I decided I wanted to focus on renewable energy. But I don't want to travel, so I want to stay local, because I live out here, right? So with the marketing background that I have, I've been employed on and off by the town to do outreach and public education, but I help them design all their renewable energy programs. Solarize, right? We were going to do a battery storage, but these are town programs that are funded by NYSERDA grants. So that's, you know, generally speaking, my interest. I help the town as a volunteer with policy. I worked with the planning department on initially the first time we started down the path of doing benchmarking. You know, I wrote, we submitted 4 grant proposals today to the deputy supervisor to do a variety of things like trying to get solar panels on, you know, and maybe battery storage on low-income housing,
Okay.
net zero, that sort of thing.
Thank you. But so for all intents and
I'm-
purposes, you don't have a particular view on the risk associated with that
No.
particular facility,
No.
nor its impact on the critical infrastructure over that canal to the east end. You
No.
don't really have a view on that.
But
okay,
I do
thank
have,
you.
I am the founder, though, of a not-for-profit called Peak Power Long Island, because that's the only way in which the town can utilize my services. So I have a not-for-profit.
Okay, thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, this is the town's logo, not.
I think we get a little lost in the weeds, and this is just so simple. This facility is proposed to be 30 yards from 27, 30 yards. All you got to do is look at traffic on a normal day going west and then contemplate what would happen if we had to shut down that road for a week.
Thank you.
I guess there wouldn't be any traffic out here.
There wouldn't be traffic, yeah.
That'll reduce the traffic.
One more thing, in the training that we've had in the fire department, when we have a propane dealership catch fire, it's a quarter-mile evacuation route around it. I had the opportunity to fight Hampton Tank Gas Service. If the relief valve on that 2,500-gallon tank truck had not worked, I would not be here today, and neither would about 75 other men, because that thing would have killed all of us. but quarter-mile evacuation is what they recommend. And I'm concerned about containment of the material, and if that catches fire, how do you handle it? Before they go ahead and put any installation in. And Mr. Arnold brought up all the points. I'm 100% for him. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Bob.
Should we excuse ourselves?
Sure,
thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
the opportunity of
Yeah, absolutely, no, absolutely,
Thank
it's a
you.
good point, good issue to, aye, sure.
So in my role on that committee, I have in my possession a copy of all letters that have been written, and I certainly have access to the two recorded webinars. And with my background in consulting and having worked at IBM for 30 years, I would just suggest that fact-checking is really important. There are a lot of things being said. There's a lot that I have read that is not 100% accurate. Ask people what their sources are.
Yeah,
So please consider that.
right, Yeah, but-
I mean, I'm sure you do, but I'd
Yeah.
like to go on the record as
okay,
making sure that
we
I
appreciate that.
Thank you, Lynn.
made that
Okay,
statement.
thank you so much, Lynn. All right, so this presentation was a little longer than we thought, but, so we'll try to go through the rest of the agenda a little faster. The next point on the agenda was the review of the various task forces and maybe creation of new task forces. So the next one was a task force to review the local law 7 of 20 and the chapter 1 and the penalties for local code violations. So I think Christian and I we're gonna work on it. I think there's a new, and now we have Len Zinatti, who is the new trustee on the village board, who is now the liaison with the village court. So I think maybe we should set up a meeting with him and look at how maybe we can improve enforcement. Maybe we can also review the various fines associated with the local code violations. The ARB has done some work on it for fines relating to building code violations and their own zoning code. But I think there's many other local ordinances that we could look into. So, can I volunteer Christian to take a lead role in this?
Thank you for, thank you for
second
that.
that.
However, what I'd like to bring to this commission this evening is a reminder that we now have a new administration as of just a few days ago with goals which may be different than the previous administration, and it is therefore important for us to sit down with the mayor, sit down with its board of trustees, and figure out from their views what we should be focusing on as a commission. I think we should spend time on putting a list together of items that we may want to do, but we are serving at their pleasure, and they need to tell us what they want us to work on. And so I know the Board of Trustees and the mayor would be very keen to provide us with direction, and I think that would be useful rather than sort of go off on different things, to hear from them what they want us to work on.
Yeah, okay, I think that's a valid point, but I think this item had been discussed for a while. I think it's
But
definitely an item
Don't
that-
forget, it's a new administration.
Yes, no, I understand. I think your point is well taken, but I think that it's something that we should bring up to them, that there needs to be more enforcement in the town. The latest, I got a report from the town court about the fines and the violations and that were collected, and they were really, aside from the vehicular violations, it was very, very, very little, very few fines relating to local ordinances. And there may be something that's not right in terms of enforcement or how we go about it. And I think it's definitely something that,
We
Should
should
we
present it
review?
to the mayor and
yes.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, I think what we should do is put a list together of things
Yes.
that we think are important, maybe 10 points, and let the board and the mayor decide what are the 10, what are their priorities for us to work on, and the deliverables
Yes.
over the next 12 months.
Yeah, I agree. I think that should be kind of a priority. And
Okay.
But
that's
it's a
question.
valid point, Mark. Maybe we should just put this on that list to
Yes.
give them.
Right.
Yes. Next point on the agenda was the real estate task force.
Yes, I'll take this one. I was asked today by the new administration to look into a parcel of property on Hampton Road, by Linda Riley's office. There's an open lot there, for workforce housing. I know, this new administration is, going to be big on this issue, and, they contacted me today. I know, Mark, you and I are on that committee, so maybe we can, look into this.
Yes.
And, see, if the owner, get some information and find out
Yes.
if the owner might be interested.
I've
Okay.
I've attached some information, basic information about that property and the surrounding properties right on this
Good.
package. Yes, it's definitely, and I think it's gonna tie very well with the next presentation in August by Kara Back about the housing, from the housing department, and what the monies available to possibly do a project at that location. The next point on the agenda relates to mobility and transportation. I'm going to let Michael speak about it and the possible grant
sure, yeah.
for the bike route.
As I'm sure some of you may have seen in Newsday, we, the Suffolk County and the towns that participated in the RAISE grant application were the recipients of a $3.8 million federal grant that was highly competitive. So congratulations to the Suffolk County and town of Southampton and town of East Hampton. That will benefit us, obviously, as this RAISE grant is a 100% design and construction documents from Riverhead to Montauk. We have a bottleneck that happens around Shinnecock Hills and through the village. So in that instance, there will be a planning study that is conducted as part of this process that will include most likely our village downtown, and it will perhaps present some opportunity to review some of the intersections that we have concerns with and get a 100% design on what that would look like to rectify, which is really exciting. So this is a big deal.
Okay, very good. And this falls right into our chapter 4.3 of the Village Comprehensive Plan to try to improve mobility within the village. So you'll keep us up to date.
Yeah, I mean, we're a couple months out, so just so we are all on the same page. This is a federal grant. The county has to accept the grant. Then the county and the federal government have to agree on a contract. So we're looking at a 2024 start date. As you may also know, I work with Trust for Public Land. They're getting involved in some capacity, so there may be some feasibility studies that happen in the near future, but that will also take 8 months, roughly. So this is a long-term ordeal, but you know, there's a significant amount of funding going towards planning a bike route through the Hamptons, which is really great.
Fantastic. The next point that we have here on the agenda is to discuss about possibly creating a new task force. And when we say task force, it means that we would have maybe 2 people from the Planning Commission, and then also invite 2 or 3 people from the residents to get involved and trying to draft or improve regulations in the village code. So this zoning task force, here I put together a short list of items that they would look into. The first one is when you have waterfront, ocean, basically mostly oceanfront properties. Right now, in the code, when you calculate the lot coverage or the gross floor area, you calculate the lot area is calculated all the way through the high water mark. We are one of the, I think maybe the unique municipality that calculates the area for oceanfront lot to be all the way to the high water mark. Normally, they are either to the crest of dunes or the coastal erosion hazard line. So I think it's something that and this is one of the reasons that the houses on Meadow Lane or Gin Lane are so large, because when you look at the lot coverage and ground floor area, when you start with such a large area for the lot, even though this area beyond the coastal erosion line cannot be used, cannot be built on. So this is one of the items. The next item that we that is worth looking into is when you have a renovation in an existing house, and when does the certificate of occupancy still applies during the renovation? It's a question, and whether at the end, where is the certificate of occupancy grandfathered, or then, so this is something to look into, to maybe review the checklist that the village building department uses for the pre-submission, which is really used by Alex. Another point is a possible modifications of our section 11620, which gives the Board of Trustees as an alternate route for approvals instead of the ZBA. So I think that I'd like to maybe volunteer again, Christian, if he wants to take a lead on this, maybe put together
I think
a
I'd like to
group.
take the lead on this, if that's all
You
right.
want to take a lead?
Again, I don't think we should be discussing
Well,
these
that's fair.
matters at this point. We should put them all on a list of paper and
Yes.
discuss
agree
it
with
with
that.
the,
Okay.
with the
This-
board
the-
before we put the task force left and right. Doesn't make any sense. We need to have all the priorities set by the board.
No, I understand, but I think here the idea would be to create a task force, that you prepare a presentation to the Board of Trustees and say, this is what we would like to look into. And I think that between Christian and
No, I think
Michael-
Christian's point is this is a bullet on a larger page of 10 or so action items that we present
Okay,
and give, and
I
say
mean,
we'd like to study it.
We've done this in the past with a
Yeah.
previous mayor. It was successful in terms of having a list of
Right.
stuff that we were
Okay.
supposed to work on, and that's how it should
Right,
be.
and that, the action item here is that we'd like to create a task force to review these 4 codes, and
Yes.
there may be interest or there may not be.
Right.
okay, very good. And so I would be able to count on you to take these points.
Well, I think,
If the Board of Trustees.
I think Mr. Lieberman has volunteered.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The next points here, I don't know, we have, I'm not sure that Alex Wallach is with us tonight. I don't think he is. Is Daniel? No,
No.
he's not with us. All right, so those 4 items were, I was gonna ask Alex to update us on this. I think that one of them was the update on the architectural and historical structure reconnaissance survey. I think it was completed, and but we'll get an update there. The next item was the IMA, the intermunicipal agreement for the home improvement contractor's license with the town, which I believe was fully executed and signed by all the parties, both the town and the village. And the other 2 points will wait for Alex at the next meeting. And our next point is was more points to discuss or offer to the Board of Trustees on how, as another bullet point that maybe we can look into, to improve government transparency, maybe have all the digitize all of the records, the village records. And the last point, okay, any other?
No, I think Christian's point is probably the one that we need to maybe end on.
Yeah.
So maybe we should just quickly discuss what it looks like to put together a list of 10 action items that we'd want to present to the mayor.
I think what would be great is for the members of the commission to think about it, circulate amongst yourselves a list, have a final one that everybody agrees on. It's going to be 10, 12 items, and then have a meeting with the mayor and some of the trustees. I know, some have desires on workforce housing, as you said, Michael. Others have desires on traffic, which we haven't talked about. So we have to hear what they want. So we could present some of our ideas, but I'm sure they're going to come with things we haven't thought about that they'd like us to work on. So we
Okay.
should try to do this before the next meeting, so
Yeah, I
at the
agree.
next
Sure
meeting,
is.
we can then move on.
Should we set up a work session, type meeting to put this all together?
Yeah, we could do that.
yeah.
Yeah,
The
I
week
agree.
of, what's the week after the 17th? It's the
Week of the 21st or something like that?
24th? The week of the 24th?
Yes, works for me.
Works for you, yeah. What day would you,
I mean, with the caveat that once you've got that, you have your list, you then organize a meeting with the mayor
And the trustees, of course.
and the
the
trustees,
trustees,
and then, and you do all this before your next planning commission meeting, which I believe is
August 3rd?
August 3rd, so that doesn't give you a lot of room.
What
You might
day?
want to move that earlier.
We could do it on the 20th? How's the 20th?
20th and 21st, no good for me.
20th and
The
21st. So what about-
17th, 18th, and 19th are fine.
What about the Monday? The
That's
follow-
not, that
the
afternoon
following-
isn't good for me. But I could circulate my comments beforehand.
The Monday? What about that Monday?
That Monday, 17th, no, I have a meeting in Governor's Island.
Oh.
That's nice.
Yeah,
On Tuesday?
that's a Monday. Why don't we begin with circulating
Yeah.
our
All right,
comments?
we'll circulate
And if
that.
we feel it, we need a work session based off of, we have disagreements, then we can schedule something.
Good idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right, that's it. So
Sounds good.
last point was the public comments and discussions. I think we had the public here. If you want to,
I just have one.
go ahead.
On the affordable housing project, I read in the Southampton Press that Epley has 8.5 acres, and he'd like to build affordable housing into it. The village, we are so limited to how much land we have left. You really have to look outside the village to put affordable housing. I think that we should look at this and make a recommendation. The town should look at this and maybe approve this project.
That's
To
a
get
very good
more
point.
I mean, it's just, I look around this, I grew up in this area. We had 450 acres of farmland. What are we down to, 50 acres of farmland left now?
Yeah, I think Bob it's a very, very good point. I think the same way we are tackling the battery storage, which is not in the village, but just outside the village, I think that this affordable housing project on Major's Path, is it Major's Path?
Yeah.
The other thing I want to mention is that when the mayor met with the supervisor, Jay Schneiderman and Warren met together, the town highway superintendent made a comment to both of them and said that these roads were not built to handle this traffic. Our roads out here were built in 1920. I read where Bridgehampton Sag Harbor Turnpike was finished in 1923. You can put all the advantages you want on County Road 39. You're not going to solve the problem. You're going to have to extend Sunrise Highway. At least get it past Southampton or Bridgehampton. Today was I've never seen so much traffic in my life. I was trying to get home. I could not get, so I said, I must have come to this meeting.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, so
I
we'll have,
would, Mark, I just want to bring up one more thing about, we haven't discussed the deer management program. Quickly, Michael Testori, the village has hired Suffolk County Deer Management. Michael Testori is the owner. He's been out in the village looking at certain properties. People have been getting in touch with him. I would ask anybody that's listening and might be interested to contact Michael via webpage of www.suffolkcountydeermanagement.com if you have any interest in this program.
yeah, thank you
Okay.
for bringing this up, Michael. Appreciate it. It's a good program, I think, and we were supposed to also go visit his facility, I think, in West
Any-
Hampton.
Anytime.
Okay, any other comments? No, so I'll just make a motion to adjourn and to our next meeting on August 3rd.
Second that.
Everybody all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye.